Hello and welcome to another inventRight.com TV show. My name is Andrew Krause. I co-founded InventRight with Stephen Key over 18 years ago and been coaching and mentoring inventors ever since. I want to make you aware of a resource on our website called the InventRight Licensing Library. So let's get started. So of course, let me show you how to navigate there. I'm going to shrink myself down. That was amazing. How did I do that? All right. So how you get there is you go to inventRight.com, inventRight.com, and then you click on Resources, and then you click on Licensing Library. So inventRight.com, Resources, Licensing Library. I'll include the direct link in the comments down below as well. So let me move myself over here so I'm not in the way so much. So I wanted to go over some of these categories. Obviously, I'm not going to read off these articles, but I want to go over some of these categories and as topics for discussion. So creativity. You know, if you're coming up with ideas, you probably already feel you're pretty creative, right? But one thing as far as creativity goes that most inventors, a tool they don't use is to first study the marketplace and then invent. So one tool to do that is Google Images. So if you were going to create, let's say you're not going to create anything, you're just fascinated with something in particular. Let's say you love gardening and, you know, your knees kind of hurt when you're doing gardening and there's all these different kneeling pads so you can kneel when you're doing gardening in the backyard. You know, a lot of baby boomers are getting older, so a lot of them are doing gardening these days. And you're like, you know, I'm going to study all the kneeling pads for gardeners, all the pads you kneel on when you're kneeling down doing your gardening. And when you don't have any invention yet. So when you look at all those products, you understand the marketplace. You understand that micro category really, really well. And then you invent. Most inventors don't do that. So I just was going to talk about some random topics here, which some of these articles are about. And, you know, creativity. You know you're already creative because you're coming up with ideas because you're watching this show, but think about other ways to be creative, and that's just one, studying a microcategory and then coming up with ideas. Most of you just come up with ideas randomly. You don't even really understand your own process. It just happened to you one day, and that's cool, but there's a better way of doing it. Your way is not wrong. There's just another way of doing it. Let's put it that way. What are some other topics here? So I'm just kind of using these topics on the InventRight Licensing Library as topics to discuss for the show here. How to become a successful inventor. Wow, 34 articles on that. You probably want to watch that. Inspiration. You know, most of us need a little bit of inspiration. That's always helpful. You can also visit our testimonial page for our students that have licensed products for inspiration, so that would be great. Intellectual property, sometimes people when they're new to licensing, they're like, what does that mean? It's just a fancy way of saying patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Those are all forms of intellectual property. And if you want to sound really cool, you say IP. You say, well, so what's your IP on it, right? So, but you can read more about intellectual property in some of these articles. Obviously legal, which is including patents as well. Let's see, interviews with potential licensees. I think we have some interviews with companies that we've talked to. Open innovation is a term if you're not really familiar with it. It just means that companies are open to your ideas. So it's about open innovation. Open innovation is just you coming up with ideas and sending them to companies being open to them. So that's a cool term to be familiar with, and you can read more about that. Let's see, prototyping is something that a lot of inventors are worried about, concerned about, enjoy doing too much sometimes. They don't focus on the business side of things. Pull-through marketing is something Steve and I have talked about. You know, getting interest from a retailer is one way of pull-through marketing. And then going to potential licensees and saying, hey, look, this retailer is interested. It's not the standard approach that we teach our students to use. You go directly to the companies that sell in the retailers where you want to be, but there's always alternative and additional methods you can use. Reducing your risk, sell sheets, that's basically your sales pitch to the company. So you don't need to be a salesperson. It's a one-page advertisement so you can sell your product to the company and you just send it to them and that does the selling for you. You don't have to ramble on the phone. Most of you aren't up for that anyway. And don't worry, you shouldn't try to do that. trying to describe your invention over the phone is like trying to describe how to tie your shoelaces over the phone. You just don't want to do that. A lot of success stories here, some articles on the toy, gift, and novelty industry, trade shows. Trade shows is another way you can meet companies that can license and buy your product. Of course, you can just contact them directly, so you can read more about that. Venturing, some people don't know what that means. Just a fancy way of saying start your own business and sell it yourself. Stephen and I much prefer licensing, but you can read about venturing, the trials and tribulations there, and that's your decision to make. But we really believe for most people, licensing is a better method because unless you're going to quit your day job, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, and risk a lot, licensing is a much safer way to go. And you can still think really big because when you license to that big company, you are that big company. If they're in 20,000 stores, you're in 20,000 stores. But there's nothing wrong with venturing, but make sure you understand it and what's truly involved because it's not about your idea so much. It's about all the work that you have to do day in, day out for 60, 70 hours a week for at least 3 years of your life. Yeah, you can start a micro business, but that's not quite the same thing where you're just selling a few on eBay or whatever. Most inventors, they have good delusions of grandeur, which are very possible when you're licensing, because you can license this really big company, put it all off onto them. When you're venturing, you have this little micro business and figure out what you're earning, and you're really earning like minimum wage when you figure out how much time you put in. It's like, is this what I intended? Don't I want more people to enjoy my product? Working from home, working from freelancers. So these are just some different topics that we address in our InventRight licensing library. And Stephen has put a lot of work into these articles. So I highly recommend you go to inventRight.com, click on resources, and then licensing library. Check it out. I want to remind you guys to take care, keep inventing, and we'll catch you the next time. See you.
Hi, this is Stephen Key, and I just want to thank you for watching InventRight TV. We're here to save you time, save you money, and show you how you can bring your products to market through licensing. So please subscribe down below, click on the button, and tell your friends. Thank you.